Awesome. Thanks, Madison. So again, thanks for joining this event. We are going to kick off the day with a few introductions. I'm Mariama Dryak-Valleys. I'm the director for the Polar Science Early Career Community Office, or PSECCO, and I'm joined by a PSECCO colleague, Madison Payne, who will be acting as tech support for today. And she sent out multiple lovely emails to you all prepping you for the event. So that's Madison. And if you run into any bumps along the way regarding technical difficulties, please direct message Madison and she'll do her best to help you work through that. We're also joined by Alicia Christensen and our speaker for today with CIEE, the Center for Education, Engagement, and Evaluation. And we'll be introducing her here shortly. But if you could give a wave, that'd be great, Alicia. Okay. So before we get started, we want to highlight a couple of things. At the core of PSECCO is building welcoming environments for everyone, and we expect that all attendees will adhere to PSECCO's community guidelines when interfacing with others on the call, which Madison is pasting a link to in the chat. If you're not familiar with them, please take a look. Some of the things that we center in those guidelines are on the screen. Many of us here do polar science in locations across the United States and beyond, and with much of that research focused on both poles and in high alpine regions across the world. We want to acknowledge that much of that science takes place on the unceded and traditional territories and ancestral homelands of Indigenous peoples, and that some of the research done in these locations has historical roots in colonialism. With this land acknowledgement, we celebrate the many contributions of Native peoples to our understanding of the polar regions and recognize the sophisticated and intricate knowledge systems Indigenous peoples have and continue to develop in relationship to their lands. The call today is starting with this welcome and community guidelines. We'll introduce Alicia here shortly, and then we'll hear from her on presenting climate mental health strategies and activities for those of you on the call. We'll also hopefully have time for a short question and answer. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and the PSECCO team will be tracking them as we go along, or you can save them to the end when we get there. And then we'll wrap up. Okay, just a quick reminder, I think someone might be unmuted. If that's you and you can mute yourself until you're Alicia who will be speaking, or you'll be answering a question at the end, that would be great. Okay, so we are joined by Alicia, as I've noted. Alicia is the Associate Director for Workforce, Career Development, and Student Research Experiences at the CIRES, or Cooperative Institute for Research and Environmental Sciences, Center for Education, Engagement, and Evaluation. She currently manages the Research Experience for Community College Students, or REX program at CIEE, as well as several other research experience programs. And she supports the team's programming for lifelong learners and the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network, or CLEAN, where she coordinates educator professional development and resources, including around climate mental health. Alicia holds a Master's of Science in Marine Resource Management, focused on marine education, and spent 7 years before and during her Master's teaching in informal learning environments, including 2 aquariums. So she comes to us today with a wealth of experience, and we're so excited to have her. With that, I will pass it over to Alicia.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Nice to meet all of you. And thank you for the nice introduction, Mariama. I got kind of interested in this field of climate mental health actually back when I worked for a zoo for a while as well. And back then we were really interested in kind of seeing how we could integrate social emotional skills into a lot of what we do, and also noticing that as we were teaching about environmental topics, that kind of the social emotional skill development was needed with students, especially some of our older students who, really, I think, started to understand the repercussions of some of these environmental problems that exist out there. And so when I moved to CIRES, we kind of started talking about, this same concept and need And so I started doing a lot of research in this area and developed some web pages for the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network around climate mental health, pointing out kind of what's available out there to support people and also the youth that they're teaching. So, and then most recently participated in a study on our team looking at climate mental health needs amongst actually research faculty and graduate students. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. So we're going to start off today by actually doing a quick poll. And this is the climate emotions wheel. These are emotions that Panu Pikola, a Finnish researcher, did a lot of research on and identified as kind of the main emotions that people feel related to climate change. So I'd like you to take a minute, look at this wheel, and then answer the questions in the Zoom poll. And Madison, when you're ready, you want to share that poll. I know a few responses are still coming in. Madison, are you sharing the results of the poll?
I think she is. I had to open it up in another window if you want me to
Oh,
share that,
I see.
but I'd be happy to share that if that's helpful.
Yes, could you? Yeah, I cannot see it for some reason.
Yeah. Um, Madison, you might have to stop sharing unless you want to reshare the answers. Okay, awesome. Okay. Can you see that
Okay,
okay?
great. Yes, thank you.
Great. Let me know
Okay,
when to scroll and I can go to the other ones.
okay, excellent. Thank you. So it looks like within this group, at least, we have a lot of frustration, powerlessness, overwhelm, disappointment is high too. Um, some anxiety and grief and yeah, and I see some hope in there. It's a little bit smaller and some positivity. Um, but it's a little bit smaller and I feel like this is pretty typical of what we find, I think, especially amongst or kind of early career folks too. And the reason why I do this activity is because I think it's really helpful to see how others feel about this problem. This is something that we don't really always talk about as a society or provide space to talk about. And it can be helpful just to know that there are other people that feel the same way that we do and kind of create some of that solidarity. And see, and then Madison, or I mean, Mariama, can you scroll down a little bit? Um, so then, interestingly, this looks a little bit different. How do you think your children feel, or your students, or youth, or your peers feel about climate change? Anxiety is a lot higher there than the frustration. So that's kind of interesting. Hope is still in there about the same amount. Some anger looks like, and frustration still, and despair. And then, Mariama, can you scroll down a little bit more? Okay. And then I asked this question, have you asked or opened up space to talk about this? And it's wonderful to hear that a lot of you have. There's still quite a few people that have not, and this is typical too. Usually when I ask this question, I do this workshop a lot with educators too, and a lot of them are science teachers and are really hesitant to ask this question in their science classes to bring up emotions with their students because they're kind of worried about where that conversation will go. But uh, for educators that have actually asked their students, about this, they were surprised. We tested a bunch of strategies and activities out with teachers, and they were actually really surprised at how much their students wanted to talk about this issue. They had students that, had never really engaged in class that suddenly engaged and wanted to talk about it. And sometimes I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of what we have sometimes about youth, and feeling maybe they're a little bit apathetic about climate change, and not realizing that that could be actually signs of grief or overwhelm or other things going on there. So thank you, Mariama. You can stop sharing your screen. Thank you. So for those of you that have well, for anyone, I think this is a great opportunity to just help open up conversations and provide space to talk about this issue. And one thing, that is really, I think, um, uh, really apparent in a lot of the research is that especially younger generations really want to be listened to about this issue. A lot of them feel like they are just not being listened to. When you look at kind of emotions, and a lot of the research that's out there currently, interestingly, is of young adults. There's not a ton of research of emotions of older adults. But the research, indicates that people, I mean, especially young adults these days, are over 50% are very or extremely worried about climate change and its impacts on people and the planet. Alaska, I know many of you are probably from Alaska on this call, even Alaska, over 50% of youth are very worried about this issue. There was a study that was done across the world of 10,000 youth, ages 18 to 25, and they found that the emotions that youth most commonly feel across the world are sadness, fear, and anxiety. So this group, I think you guys were really on point with realizing that your students, that anxiety was up there pretty high for them. What's striking too, though, I think, with some of these numbers is things like 4 out of 10 are hesitant to have children because of climate change. And I've talked with youth that have told me this, that they don't want to have children because of climate change. Um, and, 8 out of 10 think that people have failed to take care of the planet. And this is, I think, when you look at their beliefs related to the government, this is where they really feel like they're not being listened to. Um, 33 countries, believe the government is protecting the planet and future generations, which is great, but 64 countries believe the government is lying about the impact of actions taken. 65 believe the government is failing young people. 60 countries believe the government is dismissing people's distress. And I've talked with many youth and heard many youth talk about just feeling like the older generations are not listening to them about this problem. And another challenge I think we run into with this issue with youth is that we have been spending a lot of time basically trying to encourage action, right? Which is great, which is wonderful. And that is a great solution to helping with despair and hopelessness. However, we need to send the message in a way that says, also, this is not all up to you. And I think that's one thing that we've kind of forgotten to do when we're trying to encourage others is saying there are many people working on this problem. Here are examples of all of the people that are working on this problem. And this is not all up to you. We are working on this together. Um, it also, is affecting mental health in 2 out of 3 youth, at least in the US. And this is even higher for youth of color. 71% are more likely than white youth to say that they have experienced a negative health impact. So what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time just for you all to, talk together about the types of strategies that you use to work through your own emotions, and or support others with theirs. Because the next part, we're going to start talking about kind of what are the needs that exist out there, and then what are some strategies that can be utilized. So we're going to take just a 5-minute breakout room and to talk about this question.
Welcome back.
Okay, looks like.
Okay, I think so
Okay,
now.
yes.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I see some smiles in people's faces. I think it's always great to connect with others. The reason why I do this activity, I know breakout rooms always aren't the favorite of everyone's, but the reason why I do this activity is because this is a really important topic to connect around and talk about and make connections around. And that's one of the biggest things that can support your own emotions with related to climate mental health is to be able to connect with others, about who are feeling similarly. And so next, I want to show you what our study found related to some of these questions. So we did a study that involved both focus groups as well as a survey of climate researchers. So it was faculty, staff, graduate students, and postdocs across the US. And this study we're still working on publishing it. But we looked at, concerns about climate change among respondents, and over 55% said that it's among their top 3 concerns. And if you combine that with the 22% that said it's the challenge I am most concerned about, that's, quite a few people, almost 75% of people saying it's a pretty top concern for them, right? And in terms of the emotions that faculty, researchers in climate change are currently feeling, and anxiety is at the top. Anger and frustration are pretty high too. Interestingly, empathy for others is up there pretty high. And I think this is a wonderful thing to see that so many people care about others, and also that can be really difficult on us when we're not only struggling with our own emotions about climate change, but we are also worried about the emotions of others. And that passion fatigue can place a lot of extra stress and an anxiety on us. And then we also looked at kind of what researchers had available to them in terms of being able to kind of cope with their own emotions around climate change. And about 20% said that yes, definitely. They feel like they have the resources and support they need, but we had what almost close to 80% saying that, like there's room for improvement, essentially, right? Um, and oops, sorry. Okay. Um, so then we also started to explore like what would be useful as they navigated their own emotions about climate change. Community and peer support is one of the biggest things, and if that's the biggest takeaway from this, I want to encourage you all, go back to your own institutions and think about, are there ways that you can help provide community around this topic to talk, right? And I'll give you some resources later for how you can create your own climate cafes or groups that, basically can help provide guided conversations around this issue. Um, Also, needing and wanting more support for climate communication efforts. So, for those of you that are interested in kind of the climate communication uh, area of climate change, I think this is a really good opportunity for you to step in and, think about how we can provide support for climate communication efforts. 49% said they wanted mental health and well-being resources, and 53% hoping that there were university-wide initiatives and programs. So again, this is something you can go back to your institutions, and talk with them about, are there opportunities to open up some university-wide initiatives around this area. And then other things people said were, again, that related to that community piece, right, of connecting with others, training to support climate communication efforts with the public and climate skeptics and policymakers, and tools to support their students emotionally and inspire hope and action. And then we also asked researchers about like kind of what they thought about their students. And this could have been students in their courses. This also could have been students, graduate students or postdocs that they were mentoring. Um, and so they felt like they thought students were expressing uh, empathy for others and some happiness up there, um, and then also some helpless and sadness and anger, right? Um, and in terms of like how frequently they see students express those emotions, but they also see that collectively, looking at all students, what they see is still a lot of worry and anxiety and fear and anger. I think the same things you all identified as well. And one thing I'll say about this is that because if you look at some of those previous studies, um, basically, and one of the things we looked at with this research too was how many had explicitly asked their students about their emotions related to climate change, and 42% of respondents had not. And you'll notice kind of that that empathy for others and happiness, at least in terms of the frequency that students are expressing those emotions, is pretty high. And so that may lead to a little bit of a misperception of how heavily climate change weighs on youth, compared to when you look at the study by Hickman et al. Earlier, found that only 31% of students felt optimistic about climate change, and 84% of youth were at least moderately worried about climate change. So again, I guess I just want to go back to the fact that it's really helpful, I think, to open up space to talk about this with others. There was also a question that reminds me, there was also a question earlier about the study about the government beliefs and students feeling like their governments don't listen to them. That was also Hickman et al., this study, this of 10,000 youth across the world that I referred to earlier. Okay. And then we also looked at what would be helpful when teaching and supporting students. And so some of the things that came up, at least from our study, that we found was uh, that climate leadership trainings in order to empower students to take action. Um, Again, with the caveat of us saying, like, this is not all up to you. We are in this together. We realize, our generation's also, for those of you that are older, recognizing and saying, we realize that our older generations, cause this problem, and this is not all up to you. And also training for students involved in climate change related research to manage emotions that this work may bring up. I talk with a lot of students who do research in the other programs that I run, and very few of them say that they've ever been asked about how they feel about climate change, even though they're doing climate change research. And then other support structures and resources that would be useful are relationships with other organizations to show examples of the climate work that's happening and provide climate related job examples and networking. The network that I mentioned earlier that I support, the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network, actually has a lot of these great examples in it. That is a resource that a link will share with you later, or if Madison has it, maybe she can put it in the chat right now. But that is a great one actually for finding some of these examples. And then also like shareable knowledge about local level climate, so that students and families can make informed decisions, updated kind of like curriculum and activities that include more nuance about anthropogenic climate change, climate justice, and history. Again, that Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network is a place you can find some of these. So, our recommendations from this study were really to try to there are a lot of existing resources out there that I think people are unaware of. And so part of the goal of this webinar is to introduce you to some of these different resources that are available out there. And then going back to how I've talked about the importance of community and peer support, for you all as researchers, and for so supporting graduate students you may be working with, or maybe you are graduate students yourself, and I empower you to try to form this community as well. Some of the greatest initiatives that I've seen at the university at University of Colorado were initiatives that were created by groups of graduate students. And then I think that communication capacity, building that is really important. Of course, supporting collective action. Research is indicating that collective action is what works best, not only for having a larger impact on the environment, but also just in terms of supporting our own emotions and finding solidarity and being able to be with others around this issue. And then investing in some well-being infrastructure. The University of Colorado actually has some counselors that are climate aware. And there are also websites out there that and I'll share those with you a little bit later, that actually connect you to a list of climate aware therapists. And then normalizing the fact that these emotions exist, right? And making it okay to talk about these things. So what I'd like to do next is share this video here that was developed by the Climate Mental Health Network. We have worked with the Climate Mental Health Network in partnership on development of some of the resources that I'll share. And this is a great video, I think, just to share with others, for you to watch over to look at yourself, because I think it does a wonderful job of not only uh, indicating the level of emotions that exist out there, but also like this, it's hopeful. I think it has a hopeful message at the end. So, Madison, if you want to play that.
So last year, the UN described the current climate crisis as a code red for humanity. I'm really concerned about the future of the children being born today, essentially. And on a selfish level, I would like to have children, but with what I see at the moment, I'm not super sure it's a great idea.
I've always wanted to be a mom, and I feel like my desire or want to be a mother is being slowly like ripped away from me the older I get, so that's really upsetting.
I can't morally justify raising a child in a planet that's literally on fire.
My generation will not get to grow old or enjoy the different stages and experiences that life has to offer.
Things that are predictable and have been predictable for a very long time are being ignored. So just not having a future in general is a pretty scary idea to grasp at 17.
Is there going to be a natural disaster that devastates my home? Are we going to have food shortages? Will I get left behind? Will my family get left behind?
My biggest fear related to climate change is that we are actually on track to lose it all.
I feel like I constantly see on the news about unprecedented fires and floods and hurricanes, and I think about how people aren't going to be affected by these things equally.
I live in Austin, Texas, so right now we're seeing triple digits, and it keeps getting hotter in Texas from the last 2 years I've lived here. It's becoming more unbearable for folks to be living in this part of the region and seeing how that's going to affect us in the future and what we can do now to stop that.
Some people think of Iraq as just a desert, but it's much more than that. We have a beautiful nature and scenery distinctive to each region within the country. It would be devastating to see all that just get ruined with climate change.
Some of these experiences seem like they are far from us, but seeing people struggling to get water, as a person who has lived with water scarcity or water shortages for quite a long time, it's frustrating.
In BC, we have seen the impacts of climate change firsthand, from forest fires and wildfire smoke everywhere, to extreme cold and extreme heat that is so uncharacteristic. So we need to be sure that when we're talking about climate change, we're not talking about concerns for the future and solely anxieties for the future. People have legitimate fears, concerns, anxieties today.
My biggest fear in the future as it relates to climate change surrounds the lack of prioritization for the needs of disproportionately impacted communities of color and low-income communities.
I think my biggest fear would be people will continue fighting against each other and finding things to fear instead of focusing how we can work together and create solutions and think positively and help each other.
I have a few things that cause me fear when it comes to the climate change. First, in governments actually listening to their citizens to take substantial climate action, but also having them help other countries who deserve climate reparations and are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis right now.
I often feel like every single thing that I do has to somehow relate to solving this issue. And it's kind of taken over my life.
It's sort of like picking at me, almost like taunting me a little bit. If you don't do this, then the world's gonna end or something like that.
And so there was this one moment, I was on an expedition with 200 people from around the world. One moment when all 200 people went silent at an ice fjord, and we could literally hear icebergs melting. So think of that for a second. Millions of drops of the purest water on the planet falling into the freshest body of water that exists. But what I used in that moment was the connection with community.
What revives me emotionally is seeing others act as a community, advocating for action.
The thing that helps me to feel more resilient is by kind of leaning into engaging this area.
All of us are connected. We don't need to take more for ourselves than anyone else. We have to change society and we have to do something different.
I find that I am most fulfilled when I am serving others and advocating for communities who have not been granted resources and a visible platform to discuss their ideas.
Having those communities, those networks of support has been the ultimate form of resilience building, emotionally and mentally for me, and being able to also take what I've learned in my experiences and share them with other people.
That's really what being human is all about, and we're all going through this together. Climate change is happening to everyone, so being able to talk to others about it, really that's what I think we all need right now.
People in communities already know what the problems are and what solutions they need. So kind of like, giving people the confidence and power to solve their own problems. I think that's what, also fosters emotional resilience for people and communities. And I think that's what I would really need at the moment, honestly. Yeah, that's what I would need.
Creating hope for myself and really involving myself in the climate movement in a way that's celebrating my heritage and the plethora of sustainability practices that are in a lot of our ancestral knowledge. I think that's something that I kind of took in terms of the way I wanted to affect the sustainability space. And this really gave me a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose when it came to the climate movement.
Taking action is our only option that we have to save this planet. And I think that the younger generation, including myself, can take the lead on this relevant initiative. We can speak up and we can contribute much more than we can imagine.
Really, what I need now is not a quick fix. I need my government to recognize my rights, and I need my government to recognize the rights of the people I love and the people I've never met.
Seeing how we can come together to provide a better future for one another through that community, through that, groups and events that we can do to bring action in not just a local level here in Austin, but on a more global scale as well.
We need to be able to imagine new futures. We need to be able to imagine futures and reimagine ways that we can exist and be in this world beyond the American dream, beyond the confines that already exist.
It actually feels like I am being a part of saving the planet, and that really makes a person happy, and that's what makes me happy.
I always find that video incredibly empowering and emotional. Always brings tears to my eyes. You can find that for free on the Climate Mental Health Network website if you want to go there and watch the video again or share it with others. Then I also am going to, in the last few minutes here, share some other resources with you. So on our webpage, the Center for Education, Engagement, and Evaluation, you can find some strategies that link to a variety of different resources that are out there. You can also find some activities here that were created to kind of help if you are teaching or working with youth that can help open up conversations, and some of these activities are just great to use with your peers and community. But there's a lot of resources, links to a lot of external resources that exist out there to help kind of with managing climate emotions. And the main strategies that you'll kind of hear about on the website. A big thing, I think the first thing is oxygen mask on first, right? And then others. So self-care, compassion, fatigue, and burnout are common. So there's something called the Pause, Reset, Nourish framework you'll find in our resources on our webpage that talks about kind of how to be able to work on your own emotions. And you'll also find some links to like some climate aware therapists and things like that. Climate justice is a key part of all of this, and making sure to include diverse voices in all conversations about solutions. Frequently, voices are left out of these conversations, and so that's a really important part of this. Encouraging and taking action. You heard a lot of the youth talk about that, and it is one of the biggest things to help work through emotions. But the important part is that it's collective, that it's local, it's place-based, it's personally relevant, and that people feel like they have agency to make a difference. And a big piece of this too is focusing on one small part of the problem. If you focus on the whole thing, it's so overwhelming. And then listening, I've talked about this earlier, that listening first before moving towards action is really helpful. People want to be listened to, they want to be validated. Join in creating community and connection. That's one of the biggest messages from that video we just watched. Incorporating trauma-informed approaches. And you can find actually some examples on our website of how we have incorporated some trauma-informed approaches into our own curriculum. But a big piece around that is realizing kind of common signs of distress. And especially when you see changes in behavior. The fear, the anger, the sadness, the numbness, even the apathy can be signs of trauma and distress. And just, attention difficulties, difficulties with self-regulation. So these are just some things to look at when people are being triggered and having kind of trauma reactions. And then I mentioned you can find some resources on our website about that show examples of integrating some trauma-informed practices like choice, voice, agency, and some ways to kind of introduce subjects. And then in terms of joining, creating community, there's some great resources out there already. There's a website for climate cafes across the world. Notice in the map, you don't see any up in the polar regions for the most part. You see a little bit in Europe, but I would, most of you are from polar regions on this call. And so this is a great opportunity for you all to create community and create some of these conversations. The Good Grief Network has actually a training you can sign up for on how to run these climate cafe kind of support groups. Climate Psychology Alliance of North America has some online climate cafes you can join. And the Talking Climate Handbook has some strategies too for how to have conversations about climate change in your daily life. And then finally, I think the last strategies are really trying to develop social, emotional, and positive coping skills. That empathy for others is huge. Practicing gratitude, like every day. Every day I kind of do a meditation where I practice gratitude for the things I'm really grateful for. And I can't tell you how much that helps me personally. And getting out in nature is such a huge part of this too, helps build resilience. Moving through grief, and being aware of kind of our distortions in thinking. So things like where we're awfulizing things, we're thinking of the worst case scenarios, and just trying to recognize, right, that's a grief reaction that we're having. And then finally, cultivating hope and resilience. And I love the end of that video because I feel like it cultivates so much hope. And And so again, like going back to nature to develop some of that agency and some of that resilience, reframing negative thoughts to be more objective, kind of using some of the learnings from positive psychology and sharing examples of hope. So I want to point you in the direction for some of these strategies of the Climate Mental Health has some grief resources that I want to point you in the direction of, and just explore that whole site. That whole site is wonderful, and they do a whole bunch of webinars too around these subjects. I mentioned positive psychology. This is an example of kind of how to reframe some thoughts. So instead of focusing on the situation, the doom and gloom of climate change, focus instead on what are the behaviors that people can do, and what are the behaviors that you personally can do, right? And thinking about what are the solutions that we can take, instead of focusing on one solution, kind of being open to multiple options based on what works best for you or others that you work with. Instead of dwelling on the past, thinking and directing behavior to the future. So as we have more, we'll be sharing these slides. So if you want to afterwards, you can go back and kind of look through some of these other examples of how to reframe some of the problem into more of a positive, solution-oriented piece. And then I already mentioned also on our site you'll find some lesson plans if you want to look through, including the activity that I used at the beginning with the climate emotions wheel, if you want to use that with others. I also want to highlight some books that are out there for you. Emotional Resilience in the Area of Climate Change by Leslie Davenport. She is an expert in this area, and that's most of the therapy that she does. Is around supporting students with their, supporting people with their climate emotions. The Existential Toolkit for Climate Justice Educators is an excellent book too, that covers this area. And Not the End of the World is probably my favorite book by Hannah Ritchie. And she uses data to show basically how things are changing for the better. Here's a link to the Climate Mental Health Network that I've mentioned earlier. And I think we've shared the Climate Mental Health Network in the chat. But I encourage you to go there. And then lastly, what I'd like to do for the last few minutes today, because I know this is a really heavy topic, and I think that it's always helpful to spend some time to just kind of decompress after we talk about this. So I'm going to share a meditation here developed by Harriet Sugarman, and this is something you can find on the Climate Mental Health Network. So Madison, if you can play this video.
For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to take you on a guided journey that moves us together through time and through our lives, past, present, and future. Please find a relaxed position. You can be seated, you can stand up, or you can lie down. Consider closing your eyes or lowering your gaze, or if you feel moved to do so, keep your eyes wide open, wherever you are most comfortable with. We begin. Please follow along with my voice and direction. Standing or sitting, eyes open or closed, please take a moment and think about someone who was important to you when you were young. They may be alive today, or they may have passed on. This person may have helped raise you, or they may be someone who, since you were a young child, helped you grow, literally or figuratively, in thought, spirit, or personality. They helped shape who you have become today, and at that time, they helped you begin to define who you thought you wanted to be. This person could be a parent, a dear aunt or uncle, a family friend, or a teacher. Take a few moments now to think about them. I want you to take a step backward in time. Your person is beside you. If you're standing up, take a step back. If you are sitting or lying down, let your mind drift backwards. There is now someone else with you and your person, an elder who was important in your community or who stood out in your family history, a great-grandparent, a great-great-uncle or aunt, a dear family friend. You may have known this elder or not, but they have a place and space in building your family history or the collective history of your community. With these two people who you are thinking about beside you, take 2 steps forward, literally or in your mind's eye. Now I want you to think about a young person in your life. It might be your child, your niece or nephew, your grandchild, a memorable student. It might be a peer, a younger sibling, or perhaps a cousin or neighbor. You have helped shape this young person's life in some way, through stories, shared meals, time spent together. Let's take a moment or two of silence while you think about them. This young person is now with you and your ancestors. Together, you each take one more step forward. Now, in your mind's eye, as you look to the future, you can see a child in front of you. You can't quite make out their features as they're turned slightly away from you, but you know this child. Perhaps they are your grandchild, your neighbor's daughter, your great niece, your student's child. Take one more step forward. You are now standing beside this young person and you have brought your ancestors, your elders, your community with you. Together you surround this person, beside, in front, behind, wherever needed. You are protecting them. They feel your presence. You are there to fortify their perseverance. You won't let them falter. They know they are safe and supported. There is an unspoken understanding of the complications this young person faces, the difficulties that climate change has brought, the sadness, yet they are standing strong, knowing that their elders, their community, you did not give up on them. You created opportunities for them that have evolved over time. You helped shape their resiliency as well as their active hope. They have you to lean on. They have the knowledge of where they have come from. You are a good ancestor. Now open your eyes if they were closed. We are in this moment together. We are a community. We are standing strong for one another. You are a good ancestor.
Okay. So, last thing I just wanted to share here is this is what gives me hope. I like the data, and this is from Hannah Ritchie's site. And for me, it's hopeful to see that the CO2 emissions per capita are going down for many countries, and it's raising in some, but it's going down in the US and Canada. And this is what brings me hope. So I hope you all find something that brings you hope. And I encourage you to think about something that brings you hope today as you leave. If you have any questions, sorry we didn't have time for questions, but if you have any questions, you can please reach out to me directly and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, everyone. Understand we're at the top of the hour, so if you need to hop away, that's totally fine. I have a few wrap-up notes. Thanks so much. I see a heart explosion on my screen. I don't know if everyone's Zoom version is showing that, but there's a lot of appreciation for you, Alicia, and thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks, everyone on the call for coming as well. We just wanted to highlight a few upcoming or an upcoming event that we'll have on the calendar for the start of May regarding international policy engagement and learning how to engage in that space as a polar early career scientist. As always, you can reach us in all of the PSECCO places. You can reach us via email at psecco@colorado.edu or get connected with other early career researchers on our website as well. We'd love your feedback. It helps Alicia know what was helpful and what wasn't helpful. It helps the PSECCO team know what was helpful and not helpful in terms of structure. So if you can take a few moments from your day and fill out that survey, that would be great as well. We will follow up. I saw some questions in the chat. We'll follow up with links to all the resources that were shared in the chat. We'll follow up with a recording of the event that probably will be ready next week, and with slides as well. So all the resources shared today, rest assured, will end up in your inbox, and keep an eye out for that. Thanks so much, and we hope you have a really good rest of your day.